Joe Glaser. We're here at American Music City Vintage. Did I get the name right?
Music City Vintage.
Music City Vintage. Music City Vintage Guitars. This is my new favorite guitar store. This place is incredible.
Well, it is the most accurately named facility possible.
Of everywhere in Nashville, you can't get more well named than this.
In Music City.
This is a great collection. Joe Glaser on the couch today. How you doing, sir?
Great.
Thanks for taking the time.
Good day. Well, thank you for inviting me.
So we've heard the story of the lost Paisley from Brad Paisley, who has told the story. What was your involvement with the guitar?
Well, other than being a Fender nut and a guitar nut, and having gone through my own personal evolution of was Paisley cool or not cool? I'm talking about the finish, not the guy. My involvement was that I kind of liked the way the original pink ones deteriorated. Never liked the any of the reissue stuff, and never thought about it beyond that. I was at a party at a NAMM show talking to a random stranger. No, not a random stranger. A guy I knew. We probably were talking about Brad, and whatever we were talking about, we were talking about the fact that there might have been other Paisley colors. That cling foil. My mom had used cling foil to put in the pantry at one of our houses. She didn't use the Paisley pattern. She used this flower pattern. Right. And I vaguely remember that in retrospect. We were talking to this guy. Goes, well, I found a roll of blue Paisley in a trash can. I said, no, what? He goes, yeah, it was at a garage sale. I asked the woman if I could have it, and she goes, no, if I could buy it. She goes, no, but you can have it. I said, is it the same thing? And he goes, yes. And I said it was the blue because we'd been talking about the fact that blue would look lovely. And he said, yeah. And so I started trying to lobby him into letting me see it or handle it or send it to me. And I promised him that I would take care of it and send it back, which he didn't do, and I wouldn't have done if I was in his shoes either. And that sort of went in the back of the mind. And then at one point, I think I told Brad about it. At one point, it got mentioned by a guitar builder that somebody had found some blue Paisley paper and contacted him about making a blue guitar for himself, and maybe there would be enough for Brad. And we all talked at that point, and I followed up on it aggressively.
It was the same guy?
Nope.
Different guy?
Nope. Yeah, the first guy wasn't a guitar builder, but he was in the music business. Yeah. And neither of these guys have names, amazingly.
What are the odds?
So I followed up. Brad said, let's get some of that no matter what. If it's $4,000, let's get some of that. And so I followed up immediately with the guitar builder, who told me that the guy changed his mind, and to get it off, he had to use a hair dryer or something. It would have been ruined and not usable. It was like, wah, 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 So I started watching, and this was probably 2022 or something, maybe even earlier than that. So I started watching eBay and Etsy and Facebook Marketplace every day. I'd come home, sit, collapse in a chair, and like some sort of weird, obsessed, neurotic, pull those three things up. Paisley shelf paper, blue Paisley. I don't know why we got focused on blue or why I got focused on blue. I was looking for the blue or the green. I thought that'd be what would be the most beautiful. Anyway, I did this for a couple of years, and finally I got back in touch with the guy from the party and said, do you have even like a couple square inches of it that we could use to try to recreate it? And he said, well, and that just nothing ever went anywhere. So I Googled that blue Paisley paper. Most of the time nothing came up, but this forum where somebody had posted about the ammo box popped up again. And I don't belong to any forums. I barely use social media. I consider it to be necessary for business, but an evil, the beginning of the end of the world. But I went ahead and did this, and I found this guy's original listing about having found this ammo box. It said, I bought this box. It was $25. I told my wife it was 20. Am I crazy? And all the people responding to it were like, yeah, you're an idiot. You're crazy. And so I told Brad about it, and we knew ammo box, blue paper, that this was the one that the guy that we had been talking to, the builder, when he went back, it was already gone. That's what he told us. He said it was already gone, too late. And so I asked Zach, because everybody likes Zach.
Zak Childs.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Zak Childs. Everybody likes him. He's, and he's a known figure. I said, why don't you reach out to this guy and see if we can get even a scrap, if there's something laying around. And so Zach contacted him, and a month went by, no response. 6 weeks, and it's like, okay, there goes that too, And so then out of the blue, the guy responded, and he said, yeah, I'm still sitting on it. I tried to get two people to make it for me. One, a guitar builder who was the guitar builder, and the other Fender. Fender said they wouldn't use outside materials, which I totally understand.
Why?
Because say you use some outside materials and something goes wrong, any big company looks at that as just a liability. And to do it for one guy who wants to use his own paint, or, people want you to, when I built guitars, I built sort of tele knockoffs. And every now and then somebody would want to send me a piece of wood to make a guitar out of. And the downside of it was that if there was anything wrong with it, if there was anything that was, wasn't dried, it warped, it's on you. It's on you, the builder. So I understand why Fender absolutely wouldn't do that.
But, is it surprising that they didn't have some interest to look at the paper, even if they weren't going to build a guitar out of it or to analyze it or something?
You'd think so. But the problem with corporate imagination is that...
Yeah, tell me about corporate imagination, Joe.
Let's say you're a singer-songwriter and you move to Nashville and you're good. And you go in and you meet some producer or some label, and you go in and you go, hey, I'm good, here I am. They'd rather say, why don't you go back home? There's enough people here already. I don't care how good you are. We've got all we can handle. And so what singer-songwriters face when they get here is they have to go, no. First thing they have to do is say, no, I'm going to do it. You're not going to stop me. And then they have to beat on the door. And they have to make themselves somebody that at least someone out there can't live without. And it's usually some fans or some other artists. And then somebody at the label, even though labels all pretend like they discovered somebody, it rarely happens that way. Same thing with an idea for a guitar company or something. Because I've pitched a lot of stuff at guitar companies, lots of stuff. Their first answer is no. And only if it looks like it's inevitable or somebody else is going to do it, do they really look at doing it. If they have the idea themselves, if one of the guys working there said, what would be really cool, then they'd go pursue it, and they've got the lanes for that. It doesn't work so well for outside stuff, and it takes years to make an idea turn into something, which we found out on this project. Anyway, this guy Alan Cross, who bought the ammo box, turned out to be, this was just unbelievable, because he still had the paper. He'd given up on getting something done with it. He had painstakingly taken all these pieces off the box, and there were maybe 30 pieces of this stuff, because there was the strip across the top. An ammo box is like a box with these reinforcement things. These grandparents had done it for their kid and said, Jenny, love from your grandparent. It was written on the bottom. I forget what it really said, but something like that. Anyway, he sent this stuff to us. We were afraid to tell him anything. We were like, just send it to us, and we'll see what we can do. And he said, I would just love it if you'd make a guitar for Brad. And if there was some left over, if I could get one, that would be incredible. So it's like, is this a trick? This is exactly what you want. So they sent it, and when it arrived and we opened it up, it was just beautiful.
What was the texture? What is the texture of this paper, would you say? It's almost hard to imagine when you see it on a guitar.
Yeah.
But is it so thin and crinkly, or what is it like?
So it's shelf paper.
Yeah.
So it's thin but with substance, and so when you put knives in the drawer, it wouldn't tear right through it. The way it's made is it's a paper layer, and then there's an aluminum foil layer bonded to it. And what they did was they took that bonded combination and ran it through these giant steel rollers, which I now know all about. And they did this, keep in mind, this was the 60s. This was 1967. And they rolled it through this, and it put it in a variety of different patterns, but the ones that were used on Paisley was a linen pattern, which means it looked like cloth, but with some big threads and some small threads. So in a crosshatch pattern, all we were hoping for. And then on top of that, they did a 4-color, basically a screen print, which meant in the factory, they took this paper, this bonded paper, ran it through the roller, then ran it through color number 1, laid down the bottom color, then color number 2. They were all 4, in this case, 4 blue colors, of blue-green colors.
Is that why it almost looks 3D?
It is 3D.
It is 3D.
Yeah. The pink was 4 pink colors, a green flower, and so all we wanted was enough to try to reproduce it. And it turned out we were hoping if we got something this big. And John Jorgensen, the great and generous John Jorgensen, had a piece of Paisley paper, virgin Paisley paper that luthier Steve Sost had given him. It was 2 inches by maybe 5 inches. This is like finding a piece of the Dead Sea Scrolls or something. You're not going to put the whole Bible together out of it, but it's a great start.
Yeah.
Especially if it's been shielded from light all these years, so it's not bleached out. Anyway, this paper arrived, and it was a little wrinkled, and some parts of it were damaged by the glue that had been used to put it on. But like the Dead Sea Scrolls, we found that some of it could be pieced together. The pattern's a 9-inch square. To get technical about this, it's a 9-inch square, and then it repeats. So it's this square, and then the same square, like that. And that's the printed pattern. And the embossed pattern, because that's called embossing, where you roll a pattern into something, that is essentially infinite. It repeats because the wheels were this big. But it's kind of more at random. Anyway, we took this paper, and we made a few guitars. We made the one for Brad. We took the biggest pieces, and we found an old 67 body, an old 67 neck, and we figured out how to lay it down. It was a learning process. And I'm kind of like, we got to look at this painstakingly. And Brad, it's wonderful working with him because his thing is, everything's gonna be okay. That's easy. That's his answer to everything. That's easy. And of course, if you think everything's easy, it's going to be a lot easier than if you don't think it's easy.
It to me seems so hard though to do this without getting any air bubbles or without having anything wrinkle. And you only have one shot, right? So did you practice?
You only have one. Oh, that's the great thing. You only have one shot. You're using basically a contact cement, which means that you put it on the body, and once you roll that paper on, it's on.
Right.
If you missed, SOL.
So you just got on the first try with his blue Paisley?
I was sitting there going, we ought to mock this up. We ought to cut something out. We ought to make a pattern. Brad goes, no, it's easy. Let's just roll it on. And we did it. Now, we did it as carefully as possible, considering it was just ad hoc. But it worked out. We smoothed it out. You don't want to rub it too hard because that flattens the little raised aluminum foil. By the way, the pink is on silver foil. The blue is on gold foil. So it's the same foil, but they put a see-through, a transparent gold down for the blue, and they didn't do it for the pink.
Interesting.
We know so much about this now.
Okay, so you roll the first one out, and then you go, there it is.
We did that one, and we put the guitar together, and not only did it look great, it was a magical guitar.
Yeah.
Which is, not every guitar is a magical guitar, unless you happen to be sitting in Music City Vintage, where, this is...
We promised that they said if we could record here, we'd give them 5 shout-outs.
Okay, well, there's one of
them.
them.
So there's 2, actually.
But the point is, if you went down the aisle of Telly's here, there'd be a standout, there'd be, a 9 out of 10, there'd be, and so you see the whole spectrum. Well, luckily, this one of Brad's that we first put together, because it was a good body, knocking on it and stuff, it's a great guitar. So he immediately liked it, which was great. We took another piece of paper, or another thing. We started to have to scrap it together, because the first chunks, the big chunks were like this big. By the time we were ready, the second guitar, it was like this, and you had to actually match the pattern to the pattern.
Right.
It wasn't like you could just take this piece and put it on here. It's a giant jigsaw puzzle. And so the second one was for Alan Cross, who contributed the paper. And it took me 3 or 4 hours at least to get the matches. The great thing about old pink Paisley is it cracked where the paper shrunk and pulled off a little bit. So, but there were these natural crack lines. And so we were able to do the piecing so it looked like the natural crack lines, which was great fun. And we got that done, and that also turned out to be great. And then when we had enough left over to do the front side of a third one, which Zach got.
With a Buck Owens coloring book page on the back, right?
And he and Brad, Brad and Zach, when they're together, are the most mischievous characters ever. So I did the front. I glued it all on because I wanted it to look good. Brad was like, it doesn't matter that much. It's like, yes, it matters completely. Someday somebody's going to look at this, and if it's not well pieced, they're going to go,
what a shame.
What idiot did this?
Yeah.
So the front looks good. They did the back, and they just put whatever pieces where they wanted surrounding Buck Owens, and it's the coolest thing ever.
Okay, so then how do you go about recreating the paper for a run of guitars?
So I got on the phone, and I thought, having been surrounded by, it's going to be easy, I started calling these paper companies and researching, looking in Google for a foil-based paper that had a tweed emboss in it. And I found a couple things that looked great, and I ordered them. It turned out the pattern was perfect, but it was on about a 1/10 the scale it needed to be. So it was like looking at the stuff from 4 feet away. It's like, wah, wah, wah. So I called every paper company in this country and other countries and talked to them. And they said, yeah, they don't do that stuff anymore. And Borden, the company that made it, went out of business years ago. They made it in Columbus, Ohio. The Borden company made cling foil. So I finally, and making a new roller, we looked at it, it was going to be $40,000 or $50,000. And you still, if you make these rollers are steel. They're that diameter and 4 feet long. They've got the pattern cut into them with this process called EDM, which takes a little spark and goes across and does this, and little by little eats away at it. They might have used acid once upon a time, but to do it would have been incredibly expensive. And we were thinking about doing it. One of the calls I made to was a company in New England, an old company, and when I Googled them, like almost nothing came up anyway. And I was talking to this guy, old brother, he said, me and my brothers. And when he talked about the owner, the CEO, he'd go, yeah, the CEO. And I'd go, you mean your brother Bob? And he'd go, yeah, the CEO. And it's like, just say my brother.
Yeah, this is a small business, is the point. This was a small company.
I was talking to him about this, and I said, could you do this if do you have any rollers around? And he said, well, we've got some rollers. I'll roll some stuff, but this is going to be complicated. And why are you doing this? And I said, okay, well, it's been a secret up to now because I told nobody anything. I said, there's a country music artist named Brad Paisley. Oh, we're on speakerphone. He's on there. Go. There's a country music artist named Brad Paisley. We're doing this project. I'm doing it with this country music artist named Brad Paisley. And I got about 2 more words in. I hear in the background, female voice, Brad Paisley, that's my son's favorite. It's somebody in the room, some assistant. And so I went through and explained the whole thing. And I said, yeah, if we could possibly, that apparently had some effect because they got interested in it. They obviously were sitting there going, God, these losers in Nashville want to recreate this paper. It's been discontinued for
this ugly cling foil that was a bad idea to begin with.
Yeah, the Fender did as their misunderstanding in 1967 of what hippies wanted.
Yeah, right.
And but they poked around, so they rolled us out some of the sample, because they have to take these giant rollers and they have to put them in these big rolling machines and they have to roll this much paper.
What are the rollers? What do you mean?
They're steel.
So steel rollers. Yeah. And that's what you were explaining.
They're pressing this into the paper.
They're pressing the design into they're pressing the steel into the paper.
It's like if you took a machine the size of a Volkswagen Bug.
Yeah.
And you had a series of big rollers. I mean, they're this big, they're steel, they're probably a ton each. And you have a rubber roller and then a steel roller and then some more rollers. And you take this giant roller, you've seen them going down the road, these things that are about 5 feet in diameter, and it's a big roll of something.
Yeah.
And they feed it through these rollers, and it goes through, and the roller with the pattern in it, cut into it, presses it into the rubber or into the female. That embosses it.
Right.
And then comes out the other end, and you look at it. So to mock that up is a giant pain because unless they have something sitting in a drawer, they've got to set up all this machine in order to do 3x3 samples. So they ran some samples for us, and Brad immediately started using this to make his make test guitars, prototypes and stuff. And it's like, hold on, there's a limited supply of this. And it looked okay, but it wasn't the right embossing pattern. And then one day the guy called me up and he goes, Well, I was talking to the CEO. I said, "You mean your brother?" And he goes, "Yeah." And the CEO, and he said that they found some rollers in a room back there that we bought in 1982 from a company that was going out of business, and you might be interested in one of them. And I said, by then I'd had 16 patterns sent to us that weren't even close. I said, yeah, we'll look at another one. They sent it down. It was great. So long story short, I flew up there, spent a day with them, with their color expert, who was a badass color expert. We matched the gold color in our sample of the blue paisley, and gold isn't gold. I mean, we probably made 30 different mixtures of brown and yellow and a little green, a little black. And I spent a lot of time around color, and this is what they do. So they did the gold, and then they just rolled this stuff and they sent it down to us, and that's that. And then we solved the whole printing thing of getting the colors, which also was endless, because you can go to the Pantone color book. It's this thing this big of little color samples, and go, it's that blue. It is that blue. And then when you print it on whatever you want, or you print it on top of the lighter blue and so forth, it's not going to look like what you want it to.
It's going to be different.
Yeah, so you have to go start with what you want and go, okay, it's off by a certain amount of black. Can you add more black? Can you add more yellow? And so you go, we probably did 30 rounds of each color, trying to get each color right, because we wanted it to be perfect. And then we also had to look at creating that pattern. So Nick Druschel at my shop, who's a guy strong in digital arts, and he does all the CNC stuff. So he drew this stuff out based on our samples that we had, moved it around to make it look a little bit more even, so it didn't look like these different boxes. So that, because Brad cared about that, he wanted the squares to fit a certain way, and then we offset the different overlays so that it looked like it was done on a not perfect machine in the 60s, because when they did it, the screen print didn't line up.
Right, of course. Yeah.
So we did all that, and so we've printed it off. And the rest is history. Then we had to go convince Fender that instead of taking 3.5 years, that this could be done in a year, which is done by just pissing people off by going, we're ready. Are you ready? We're ready. And they've been incredible. It's been a total joy working with Fender.
Are you going to do other colors now that you have this kind of secret cracked, or is it just the...
And so working with Fender has been a great third or fourth process, because I've gotten to work with them over the years. And, with Brett Mason model and stuff like that. So
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's such a cool looking guitar, especially when you I've held Brad's. It looks 3D, like I was saying, and it plays great. And it's such a great...
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
I mean, the pink was interesting.
The blue is
incredible. Beautiful.